going to go ahead and give a content warning for this. This is not an easy video for me to make, and if talk about child predators hits a little too close to home or is problematic for you or causes issues, then please hop away from the video. I bounced between if this was a thing where I needed to record it in a way where there was a surprise at the end there, and then I realized that that's theatrics. That's not really necessary. It's better for people not to get blindsided by this, that this is what we're going to be talking about today. So if that's not your bag, I completely understand. Click away, go to a different video. But as for me, I've been bouncing around how to talk about this. I talked about this a couple times on stream, in brief, and I didn't go into full details on this particular thing because I quite frankly didn't know how, and I still don't think I know how. I also need to point out that the people being talked about in this particular video are only arrested as of right now. They're not, as far as I know, trials have not been had or anything else, so as of right now, there is no concrete evidence that person A did X thing. And you'll know why that's important when we get to things there. After this point, I'm going to start relying on my notes because it's already going to be hard for me to do this. So let's just go ahead and get into things. I also want to say I was advised at one point by a few people to not talk about this particular incident, let it blow over, let it do its thing. I don't think that's right, because the topic of child predators and how we even can go about identifying one is one that gets thrown around very, very flippantly here in the online spaces, especially in spaces that I am part of, the political spaces where people are very fast to go, FBI, check the person's hard drives. So I figure maybe this combination of things will paint a picture of what a predator can look like, as opposed to what we all have in our heads, the Hollywood depiction of one, as it were. There will be no redeems during this as usual, but since this is happening at the beginning of the stream, because I wanted to do 3 topics today, and I don't think I'm going to be able to, that's that there. At this point, I'm padding the beginning. I'm procrastinating talking about it, so let's go ahead and get right into things. And I guess we have to start out with when I was 8 years old, and somebody went into the card shop. I'm not going to name them, but they're just going to be the friend for purposes of this conversation. The friend went into the card shop. They were age 10, and I've mentioned it before. I didn't grow up with very much money, so when I went to the shop, oftentimes it was with no money at all, or maybe a little, and I would be there until my mom could pick me up, later on Saturday, and so sometimes I would be there just either with a couple snacks I'd packed in a backpack or no food whatsoever. And during one of these times, or one of these visits to the card shop, which at the time in Pensacola was called All American Cards and Collectibles, it was owned by a guy named Marty. He was actually the guy who sold me my very first Yu-Gi-Oh deck at Cordova Mall in Pensacola, Florida. I was there with a friend named Derek, who there's a history with that I really wish I could resolve. I've only met the guy one other time after an incident that happened involving a shotgun being held in my face, and I'm not 100% certain how they're doing, but I would like to have a conversation with them at some point about, hey, when we were dumb kids, why did you do these things? But that's a story for another dime. I know that it seems weird to skim over that, but it's not important for this one. The point is, this 10-year-old kid came into the card shop and offered me a hot dog. The card shop at the time was next to a Tom Thumb, and that Tom Thumb, if you've ever been to one, like a lot of gas stations, had little rotisserie hot dogs. So I would, as a kid, being 8 years old and being hungry, I said, yeah, absolutely. I'll take a hot dog. I'll do that. That sounds delicious. So we went to the Tom Thumb. They bought me a hot dog. And we were friends from that point on for the next few years. we would go on to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Pretty much every weekend. We even had a mutual rival named Damien that had way, way more money than necessary. We had my idea of what pay to win looked like in card games was very much painted by this particular person. They had grandparents who, when their $300 Yu-Gi-Oh deck would get stolen, would just replace it completely, literally instantaneously, it seemed, and that it felt really, really bad as a kid who could get maybe a booster pack every month or so, trying to scrape together a competitive deck versus this money wall, it seemed. But we would play pretty much every weekend, and then eventually I would go over to their house and hang out with them and one of their other friends. And it was at this point that we started finding out our other mutual interests. We both liked Sonic. I had an interest in Kingdom Hearts, but I didn't have a PlayStation, so I couldn't play it at the time. I had a memory card that actually had my Invisible Chow from Sonic Adventure 2, which I've lost that memory card now, and I hate it. But I learned how to breed an Invisible Chow, so I brought it over. It's just the eyes, the wings, and the little squiggly at the top is all that's on that thing. I was so proud of being able to make that thing. I brought it over there, showed them just to prove that, like, hey, this is a real thing, because this is before the internet was a mainstay in everybody's lives, and a lot of people just couldn't afford the internet even when we had AOL Instant Messenger and all that shit. So we then had a period of time of no contact, like 8-ish years. The next time we met was when I was 16 and they were 18. They were an adult at this point. And we met because I was in a Magic the Gathering tournament at TBS Comics, which was, if you live in Pensacola, was the other side of the city from what used to be Home Field Sports and Games and what used to be All American Cards and Collectibles. It then got turned into Price Busters. Now it's been turned into something else. Literally within the last year or so, I went down to visit family and it was changed. That's another conversation for another day. Anyway, this friend and one of their friends, somebody I didn't know, came into the card shop, saw me, and we had that, you know, that look when you haven't seen somebody in almost a decade and they've grown and everybody looks so different, but you have that feeling of familiarity. That happened, and we all talked with each other and then had the conversation of like, hey, you should come over to my place at some point. It'll be cool. And so me being a teenager who loved hosting LAN parties and all this shit said, yeah, that sounds great. I'd love to do that. I let my mom know, hey, this friend from my childhood just showed up at the card shop. They want me to come over here and go play games with them at their house. Is that okay? She said yes. Of course, I was 16 at the time. I was making a lot of my own decisions at that point. And so I went over to their house, and it was a pigsty. Trading cards everywhere, just a greasy film on like every surface, dishes that just did not belong in places, just strewn everywhere, and there was a very, very weird odor coming from this person's bedroom, and I'm not... It was gross. Me and a few friends offered to help clean it up because I didn't know anything about depression or anxiety or anything like that at the time, but I knew that there were some circumstances that could lead to somebody not really feeling like they could take care of their house. I knew that for a fact because my mom had been going through a divorce, and something similar had happened to her, to the point where me and a friend of mine decided that we were going to clean the entire bedroom while she was off on a business trip. So we cleaned the house top to bottom, cleaned the bedroom. This was when I was like I said, 16, 17. And so I was kind of familiar already with the fact that sometimes there are some things that lead people to not be as clean as they should, and I shouldn't judge them on that. I should just see what I can do to help. So me and a few other friends over the course of a couple nights, we got everything cleaned up, and I found out then that there was kind of a reason why they hadn't cleaned everything. It was that their dad had died, a dad that I had met when I was a kid, and they were gone now. They apparently had been a truck driver, but they'd left life insurance money in a trust fund for them, so that's why they were able to subsist without having a job, and they'd continue to be able to do so for the next 7-8 years. So this is when things get a bit bad. So apparently there were some online friends of theirs that came from Texas and started exploiting that money. They would have them pay for every meal at places like Carrabba's. And if you've been to Carrabba's, $20, $25 a plate for people. Have a group of 9 or 10 people. Nobody can afford that long term. But that's something that they would do. I guess this was their way of... It was easier for them to have friends if they were paying for it. I don't know the best way to put it, but that seemed to be kind of the case there. I didn't mind because it was my first time having chicken parmesan, and that's where this is how I learned to like cooking. By the way, was I would try meals at these places that they would they would be able to afford, and then I would go, how can I replicate that? How can I learn how to make that thing? And then I would learn from there. I learned how to cook because I would spend time at their house, and I didn't have money, and they had food in the fridge, and I needed to learn how to make it because, I mean, there was no actual adult here preparing meals. So, anyways, eventually, this person decided that they were going to move to Texas to be with these friends. There was a love interest involved in it, and that apparently died out at one point. And then the friendships with everybody else also died out due to various other circumstances. I don't remember the stuff. I don't remember all the details that were related there. All I know is eventually they contacted me saying, hey, I need to leave Texas. Can you help me? And so, remember, this person had trust fund money. They paid for me and my then partner to go fly to Texas to help round up all their stuff into a U-Haul. I found out that they hadn't actually packed anything yet, so it was a time and a half going across the country, getting everything loaded up, and then driving back home. My partner at the time, despite being over 18, still lived with her parents, and because I still lived with mine, she still lived with hers, and her parents got really mad that we were back a day late because we had to sleep at a hotel on the way back. I remember getting very angry about that. In hindsight, it was very petty because, like, we were only a few months from being able to just move in together. I don't know why I was so upset about that, but hindsight. It's just hindsight. Anyways, with some of the trust money that they had left, they got me and my partner out there. We got all the stuff together. We moved across state, got to my parents' place, shoved all of their stuff from the U-Haul into my parents' basement, and then they hung out at my parents' place for a couple months until we were able to get everything ready to go move to the city that all three of us were going to eventually live at, in Georgia. And then I found out that apparently absolutely no maturing had happened and no change had happened in the cleaning department. When we were all living together, dishes would always be left out, and food would always be left out, and there was a time where I stepped in something squishy and gross in their bedroom, and point is, not a very clean individual. Not. But still a friend of mine from when I was 8 years old. I guess I was still hanging on to that hot dog. And y'all are probably going to go into the comment sections and make your jokes about that as much as you will. By all means. Where am I in my notes? But, point is, we'd moved in together. I was excited because me and my partner were able to be together here. But eventually, those problems just kept adding up. The uncleanliness, the conflicts that would happen. I remember there was one instance where they said they were hungry, and I said, hey, I can make us some food, and I made sandwiches, and one of the sandwiches had a condiment on it that they didn't like, and they threw the sandwich at a wall, and it smacked on the wall, and I don't know how to accurately describe the hurt that I felt from that scenario, and I honestly had memory hold that scenario and forgot about it. And it's not even in my notes, but that just came out, so that's, I guess I'm processing that now. We'll put that into the back of the old brain. But while we were living together, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Championship Series was coming to Atlanta, and I wanted to go. We all wanted to prepare our decks, get ready to go. After all, we met playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And I'd gotten back into Yu-Gi-Oh! Because of them. Literally, I was playing mostly Magic, but they were playing Light Sworns and Yu-Gi-Oh! And I was like, oh my god, I can actually fight this deck with a lot of the old school cards like Soul Release and DD Warrior Lady. I want to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Again. So Yu-Gi-Oh! Championship Series happens. My first round was against Patrick Hoban, who was at that point the national champion of the United States, up until Corey McDuffie took that. If you know the story of McDuffie, I'm sorry. I met him before everything went down the way it did. But point is, this person scrubbed out of the tournament and never informed a judge that they were scrubbing out of the tournament, which meant that their opponent had to sit in one place for 50 minutes, waiting for an opponent that was never going to show up. I didn't even know that had happened until I had finished my match, gotten up, and walked over to their table and found them just kind of sitting there. And I went, "Oh, did you finish your match too?" And they went, "No, I'm just not competing now." After like 2 or 3 rounds, I guess they didn't feel like trying to figure out if they could get on the bubble to get a nationals invite. I don't know. This wasn't really important. What got me angry was, you realize you're inconveniencing your opponent, right? Like, there's 1,300 people here. All you had to do was sit down at the table for like 2 seconds and say, "Hey, I'm dropping out. I'm giving you the win. I'm going to go inform a judge." It would have taken 2 minutes of your time. Instead, you're making somebody waste 50 minutes of theirs. I don't know if that information is relevant, but I basically made this series of notes as everything that stuck out to me over the last few years, and it... Anyway, that stuck out to me, so I put it in the notes. Like I said, I've sat here for months not knowing how to go about this particular story, so here we are. So eventually, we move back out, and we stay in contact. We're still friends, but we have that knowledge of we should not live together. This is a toxic environment when we live together. Well, eventually, me and my then partner broke up for various reasons. A lot of them involving issues that happened in our polyamorous relationship, and I ended up getting with another partner later on, who many of you already know, but I'm keeping names vague for this, so if you know, you know. If you don't, not super important. Not important to the conversation. But me and my then partner ended up getting evicted from our place that we were staying at in Marietta, Georgia, and then had to go back to live with the parentals again for a little bit of time. During this time, Gigi got pregnant. We had never had the money to really fix Gigi, and having her stay in the barn at my parents' place, eventually she found a way out. I guess she found a guy cat. Guy cat got her pregnant. But that's when something else happened during this whole fiasco. I went to jail. And I've talked about this briefly on my channel, but the long and short of that story is I had a lapse in my car insurance because I had a lapse in my employment, because I had left my managerial position at McDonald's to go work at Publix. The pay was better, the benefits were better, and as I was moving over to Publix, I tried to give them my Social Security card. My Social Security card I had kept in my wallet at the time. I know, stupid idea, but it was really, really fucked up, and so they couldn't read it, so they said, "Hey, just get your birth certificate, we'll be okay." I went back home, looked everywhere for my birth certificate. It was not there. I found out later that my then ex had taken the birth certificate so that they would have collateral to use on me, so that they would be able to take one of the vehicles that was owned in my name that I had already told her she would be able to have. But apparently, taking my birth certificate so that they would have a bargaining chip was very, very important. But not knowing this, I then had to file to get a new birth certificate sent to me, and that, of course, took 2 weeks. So I had about a 3 or 4 week lapse in employment, which led to a lapse in insurance. So when I had my day that I had to go, quite just thank you for subscribing. When I had my day that I had to go to do my orientation for work, my insurance was lapsed. Police officer grabbed me and went, hey, we have to go ahead and impound your car. If you've ever had that experience, it's very unpleasant, and it cost me damn near $4,000. I did not have the money to pay for that, but guess who did? The friend of mine who had the trust fund. So they come back into the picture here. Now, a conversation starts happening again about moving out. I don't remember all the details here because I've memory holed them, but I will go off my notes. I remember situations with my parents not being very good, my mom and stepdad specifically, and eventually me and my partner at the time had to move out. And we moved into the friend's house, but at this time they had other roommates. And those other roommates were really, really into drugs, specifically weed. Nothing that I could like hold a condemnation over. Problem is that my partner at the time was allergic to that. And also, we had not been informed that even though the offer of, hey, you could come stay over here was given by the friend, none of the roommates had been informed of this. So our living situation there was a small, basically 5x5 corner under a table, and that was our living situation. We had computer monitors placed on top of dining room chairs, and we would sit on the floor, and that was where we would watch anime and play video games. That's the best we had. I played a lot of League of Legends during that time for the week we were able to stand it. But of course, that situation's not sustainable. It really wasn't. And so eventually a decision was made between me and my partner that we can't be here. It was bad for their health. It was bad for my mental. So, and also the Publix I was working at was in another city. So the decision was made that the healthiest decision was to just be fully homeless. Not couch surfing homeless, but be fully homeless. And so for the next few weeks, few months, again, I don't remember the details here. I remember it was in winter. We left, and that was when our stint in homelessness began, because we were at a house we weren't welcomed in to begin with, that was not conducive to a healthy living environment in the first place, and the parent situation being what it was, we didn't want to go back to that either. Eventually, my mom found out we were homeless, and the thing that got us out of it was her going, why are you doing that? And I went, Mom, but we've made the decision to live in the SUV because it was quite frankly a better deal than what we were having to deal with at your place and at the other place, which eventually led to us having a conversation about, hey, her going, I don't want you being homeless, please just come home. And we ended up coming home near Christmas time. I think literally a day or so before Christmas. I don't remember if it was let's stay for Christmas and see how things go, or if it was we'll move back in when Christmas comes around. But I do remember some of the details there. Again, a lot of this has been memory hold. And to be fair, the situation got a little better the second time we were there, but we still wanted to leave. So what we ended up doing was having a conversation with the friend about leaving, about moving into a new place, which means we'd be moving in with the friend with all the toxic environments again. So now we're in a situation where Gigi is pregnant. She gives birth. We beat the kittens. It's all fun. But there's a timer that says that we're going to be moving in with this person once more. And of course, when we move in together again, everything is the same as it was before the last few times. And this time, because the trust fund money had dried up at this point, they were actually worse, because before we never had to really worry about if bills were going to get paid. Now we had to worry if bills were going to get paid. Now we had to worry about the cleanliness and the toxic environment at the house. This was the house that I began my channel at. So eventually, the environment that my channel had to be produced in was just not a very, very comfy environment. It was a very, very toxic environment, mostly because there would be a lot of fights with this individual over the running of the house, over getting things clean, over how food is being made, over how much food of ours is being taken, over bills not getting paid, over people being too loud because I might be running a stream at like 1 or 2 in the morning and them not being able to sleep. I'm not saying the issues were all one way. Point is, it was once again unsustainable, and we left. Gigi had 2 kittens at that time, Nymphia and Blackie. Nymphia passed away due to urinary complications. Blackie is still alive right now. This friend took ownership of Blackie because their cat Samantha was about to pass away, and so they went ahead and took Blackie in, which worked for us because we didn't need that many cats, which, of course, if you've been on my streams, you know that I've not quite been able to avoid all of those problems over the years. We would only really see each other once a year from this point on. The idea of living together again, it had been tried several times at this point. It was not a thing that was going to happen. It was not a thing that was going to be approached again. And then I get a phone call. I wake up at about, don't even remember when it was. This is back when my sleep schedule was really screwed up. It was before Saki and I were dating. And it was during a time where I was using a subathon to take care of stuff. It was very shortly before we went and did the rescue operation on Arachne. I got a call in May from this individual, and it was them asking, hey, can you look over my cats for a few days? And I said, sure, I can do that. I can look over your 2 cats for a few days. That's not a problem. I don't have an issue with that, especially since, Blackie is Gigi's kid. So why not? I'll go ahead and do that. Sure. Why do you need me to, though? Remember, I've known this person since I was 8 years old. I know that they don't leave their house, generally speaking, outside of going to a card shop. I know that they don't go on vacations. I know they don't go visit other people. After all, I only really hung out with this person once a year for the last 3 or 4 years, so I'm trying to figure out, like, what type of thing would you possibly need me to do? And then I hear the words, because I'm getting arrested, is that correct, officer? And I think, well, I've been arrested before. It was for a day. Then I had to get bailed out. What possibly could you have done? Can't be that bad. So I hang up the phone because I asked the officer, like, hey, can you give me the address? Because I don't remember where this person lives. But, if I can get the address, that would be helpful. And the officer goes, nope, can't do that because this phone is no longer going to be able to be used. I did not know what that meant. But the next day, when I got up, I went to the person's house to go do the first round of feeding and watering the cats. Of course, the house was a pigsty, as it usually was. There was literal cat shit on the sofa. This place had not been cleaned in ages, but there was a neat pile, and I guess because it was neat was the reason that I paid attention to it. There was a neat pile of papers sitting on the countertop. The way the apartment was laid out, there was a countertop this way and then a dining room table. So just on the countertop as you walk in from the main door, there's this pile of papers. And I didn't know if I was supposed to read them or not, but I figured, what's the worst thing that could happen? So I went ahead and read the papers. And in those papers was a list of everything that had happened during the police altercation and a series of devices that had been confiscated as evidence from the person's home, and they were all electronic devices. I would take a time to pull up the actual police report, but I don't know where it is at this point. It was saved on an old phone, and I don't have that phone anymore. It might be somewhere else, but I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know why that would be the case. But I went ahead and went into their bedroom anyway, and sure enough, there's no computer there, no tablets, no nothing, no anything that could hold data in the house at all. And then I read a little further into the report, and it says that child trafficking is one of the things that they are being charged with. Again, remember, charged. Nothing has been done in a court of law yet, as far as I know. I've been checking damn near every week or so. That's probably why this has been stuck on my mind to make something of, so that somebody's got an idea of what it looks like from the outside when this stuff is happening. Because it's not always that random person over there who just talks all the time about how they love lolly shit. Sometimes it's somebody who you know, and they're just basically in your backyard. Sometimes that's the predator, but you're focusing so hard on this other shit that doesn't matter. We've got studies on QAnon that show how this shit happens, by the way. So, I realize that I might be stuck with these cats. And so I start going, well, what can I do? I start contacting our mutual friends. And by friends, I mean one, because I only remembered one, and it was the one that came into the card shop the day when I was 16. So I asked this friend, hey, can you help me with something? Would you be able to take one of our mutual friends' cats? And they said, I can talk to my wife about it, but why? Why do you need me to do that? Is our friend okay? I hope they are. I owe them my life. There is no sequence of words that you can say that will make me worse prepared to explain this situation to somebody than that. Because now I feel like the guiltiest messenger in the world. I'm about to destroy the image of a person to our mutual friend. Luckily, I'm driving at the time. And because I'm driving at the time, I can't respond to this quickly. But this friend is the type of person who can't let sleeping birds lie, so they do research. They type in the legal name of our mutual friend. And this is what they find when they do that. Like I said, I've looked at this on stream. I've been hoping that there's been updates on this where I can see what's going on, but I've not found anything. It's been kept fairly hush-hush. Cartersville, Georgia, May 8th, 2023. As a result of a proactive online undercover investigation coordinated by the Georgia Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Child Exploitation, and Computer Crimes Unit, CEACC, and the Bartow County Sheriff's Office Special Operations, 12 people were arrested over a 3-day period beginning Thursday. This mutual friend of ours' name was listed in here as having 9 counts. 9 counts of specifically sexual exploitation of children. They are charged with OCGA 1612-100, sexual exploitation of children, 9 counts. It says that additional charges for the arrest may be forthcoming, but Operation Golden Eagle took several months of planning and involved the collaboration of 12 law enforcement agencies. They are actually listed below here. Bartow County Sheriff, Bartow County District Attorney, Cartersville Police Department, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Floyd County Police Department, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, the Sheriff's Office at the Hall County, Homeland Security, Lilburn Police Department, Polk County Police Department, Roswell Police Department, and then the United States Secret Service. How deep does the shit have to go that you've got the CIA and the Secret Service, or the FBI and the Secret Service, looking into you like this? And this isn't like we're dealing with somebody, like a Martin Luther King scenario, where somebody's out there doing good in the world, and therefore you're going to find the United States government trying to stop that. This is a person who's relatively unknown completely, with this level of investigation being done on them. Again, there is no evidence as of right now, as a trial has not been done and a discovery sequence has not been done, as far as I've been able to tell. So please take that with a grain of salt. This is also why I'm bouncing around on names and stuff. But the arrestees, ranging from 24 to 64 years old, traveled from areas around Bartow County with the intent to meet a child for sex. 11 of those arrested believed that they were going to a location to meet with a child and engage in pre-arranged sex acts. One was arrested for possession of child sexual abuse material found during a search warrant execution. GBI Digital Forensics investigators were on hand at the operation to forensically process 16 electronic devices that were seized as evidence during the operation. Now, I don't remember how many electronic devices were taken from this person's home. And if I remembered, I might have counted to see if it was 16, because then I could put 2 and 2 together. But no. The goal of Operation Golden Eagle was to identify persons who engage in sexually explicit communication with children on the internet, arrange to engage in sex acts with children, and then travel to meet the child for the purpose of having sex. Additionally, the operation targeted those who are willing to exploit children by purchasing sex with a minor. Online child predators visit chat rooms and websites on the internet, find children, begin convos with them, introduce sexual content, and arrange a meeting with the children for the purpose of having sex. The children these predators target are both boys and girls. Since 2014, the task force has arrested 178 people. During Operation Golden Eagle, undercover investigators had more than 98 exchanges with persons on various social medias and internet platforms. During many of these exchanges, the subjects directed conversations towards sex with persons they believed to be minors. Some of these conversations involved the arrangement of sex with a minor in exchange for monetary compensation. 21 cases were established that met the threshold for arrest. 11 of those cases were concluded with arrests after the perpetrator attempted to actually meet the child in person. In some of these cases, the subject introduced obscene or lewd content, often exposing what the perpetrator thought was a child to pornography, or requesting the child produce and send sexual or pornographic images for them. About half of the exchanges involved websites used for dating, socializing, or even websites used for classified advertisements. Although some websites promote themselves as being for adults only, it's not uncommon for law enforcement to work cases in which children have access to these sites, establish profiles claiming to be older, and then find themselves vulnerable to victimization, harassment, or blackmail, or even assault. Several subjects were identified as communicating simultaneously with multiple investigators who were posing as minors. Such activity confirms what investigators undercover conducting these types of investigations were looking for, that many predators seek out minors on such websites to groom them as potential victims for sexual assault. The Georgia Task Force is comprised of 290 local, state, and law enforcement agencies. Anyone with information on these cases is asked to contact the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. I have no reason to contact because the person in question is already arrested. And I don't know what's going to happen with them. What I do know is I am now fostering 2 cats that I did not consent to foster. What I do know is that a friend of mine who I believed to be a rough and unclean, but overall okay individual, is not. It turns out, as far as this is concerned, in my eyes, this is enough for me to never be able to view them the same way ever again. I can't. I know allegedly all of that stuff. There's no evidence as of right now, aside from the 9 charges, but this type of stuff doesn't happen at random. This type of thing doesn't happen randomly. And I'm hoping that giving this particular story, because I've been looking on YouTube for anything about Operation Golden Eagle, anybody who's covered it, anybody who's looked at it, anybody who's known somebody who was taken in by it, anybody who could report on it, there's nothing. There's May 8th, at the time of the arrest, there's a bunch of news articles about it, and then it just disappears. There's barely anything else I can find. And maybe it's for not looking. Maybe I've been narrowing my searches too much. But I don't know. I still, to this day, have a very hard time divorcing the monster that I now understand this person to most likely be from the person who was a kid and handed me a hot dog and established a friendship when I was 8 years old. It's very hard for me to put these two people in the same mental category. But my hope is that going over this, being as open and vulnerable about this as possible, maybe this will help somebody else who's been in a situation where they've themselves been exploited, or they know somebody might be exploiting somebody, and they're on the fence about reporting. They're on the fence about trying to look into it further. They're on the fence about that. Sometimes the person can seem so normal, or you're so desensitized to the kind of person they are, that if they actually are a predator of any kind, you have no way of, you have no litmus test for it. I say this also because of the amount of people who freak out about people in basements of pizza places, people who have particular cartoon profile pictures. People point at that all the time and freak out about it and say that, oh, look, FBI needs to investigate these people. If you truly believe that, then just report them. Just do that. Just do your own due diligence that you apparently think needs to happen, and do that thing. Otherwise, it's just posturing online for points in whatever political crowd you've got. And as somebody who can now say that I probably have met and spent most of my life knowing someone who turned out probably to be a predator, then I think most of the idiots online that think that they know when somebody's hard drive needs to be investigated probably don't. Those aspects of somebody's life are often kept so secret, so in the background, that it takes concerted effort for multiple organizations to actually out them as a predator. Not randomly posturing online for brownie points. I don't know what's going to happen with this individual, and if I find that they are acquitted of everything, I will most likely be taking this video down, because at that point, they're not, at that point, as far as the law enforcement process is concerned, they're not a predator, and this video never needed to be made in the first place. But I've been having a very hard time not making this video. Alluding to it every now and again, venting about it once or twice on stream is one thing, but actually letting there be a permanent place where that story exists that I can put on the channel, so that anybody who is going through something similar, anybody who might have a similar experience with a family member who turned out to be a predator, and they seem so so much of a normal fixture in their lives. Maybe that will help them. Maybe having one person bringing their story will help them cope with that situation. I don't know. The truest answer to why is this video being made is it's for me. It's so that I can stop thinking about making it. So that I can stop thinking about talking about it. It's so that it can get out of my brain, and I can tell myself when I think, hey, I really need to talk about this thing. I really need to talk about this thing. Somebody might need this information. This might be helpful to somebody who's in a situation where they've got a family member who turns out to be a bad person or something. I don't know who it might help. But selfishly, I have to admit that the primary person this is to help is me. But if this helps you in some sort of way, let me know as well. I am a little thankful that we only have a couple pieces of fan art in the Discord right now that haven't been shown, because I will not accidentally put that on here during the editing process if it's late and I'm not thinking about it. But that needed to be somewhere besides inside me, because I have not, even on my own stream, I think, gone over everything from the beginning of the friendship to where that ultimately ended up. Most I've said is, I had a childhood friend who this happened, and I don't know how to feel about it. Fact of the matter is, I still don't know how to feel about it. I'm angry, betrayed, all those things. I'm thankful that I had the wherewithal to type out a bunch of notes for this particular video. I have them all right here, all listed out in chronological order, and I'm thankful to past me for having the wherewithal to do that, because I've caught myself trying not to break down a couple times during this. Thankfully, 6 years of doing video has given me a decent mask for being on video. I don't know how to end this, so I guess we'll just go with the usual. If you find this helpful in any way, shape, or form, please let me know in the comments so I at least have the peace of mind that this did something. Till then, insert end of video tagline here. Hey, I just quickly want to give a thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who keep this show running. YouTube and Twitch are a pretty bumpy ride at the best of times, and the stability a Patreon provides me is worth more than I can say here. I'd also like to thank each and every one of my $20 and up patrons here, and they would be Red Joker, Britzkrieg, Cameron, Dren, Jemshin, Smiling DM, Poundini, Mabbity Babbity, Naomi, Isaac, Agamotto, Jordan, Ravi, Giuni, Kiratorian, Prisma, all of you, I'm not saying that part, and Starlight. And finally, thank you to everyone else that helps keep this channel alive. While you're here, why not check out another video? And thank you for watching.